The silent colony, the twin suns of Zarian 7, cast long shadows across the mining facility as Marcus Chen wiped the sweat and dust from his face. The atmospheric processors hummed weakly in the distance, barely maintaining breathable air in the sprawling complex that housed over 3,000 human souls. 15 years. 15 years since the Vorthok Empire had arrived with their massive dreadnoughts, turning what had been a thriving independent colony into a glorified slave camp. Marcus adjusted his tool belt and looked up at the guard towers that ringed the facility. The Vorthok sentries stood motionless in their powered armor, weapons trained on the workers below. Their insectoid forms were a constant reminder that humanity was no longer master of its own destiny here. The Empire had been methodical. In its conquest, stripping away every symbol of human independence, while keeping just enough infrastructure intact to maintain mining operations. The communication arrays had been the first to go, cut off from Earth, from the other colonies, from any hope of rescue. Marcus remembered the day they destroyed the main transmitter. Dr. Sarah Walsh, the colony's chief medical officer, who had somehow become their unofficial leader, had wept openly. Not for herself, but for the children who would grow up never knowing freedom. Marcus. The voice belonged to Zara Okafor, the communications specialist who now spent her days maintaining the Vorthok mining equipment. Instead of reaching for the stars, she jogged over to him, her dark skin glistening with perspiration. "We need you in Section 7. Another cave-in." Marcus nodded grimly. The Vorthok pushed the miners harder each month, demanding increased quotas of the rare minerals that powered their war machine. Safety protocols were considered inefficient. Human lives were expendable resources. "How many trapped?" he asked. 6. "Captain Morrison is already there with his team, but they need your engineering expertise to shore up the tunnel." Captain Rex Morrison, or Bulldog as everyone called him, was their security chief. Before the invasion, he had been a decorated Earth Defense Force veteran. He led a skeleton crew of guards who were little more than prisoners themselves, forced to maintain order while watching their own people suffer. Marcus grabbed his emergency kit and followed Zara through the winding corridors of the facility. The walls were lined with Vorthok surveillance devices, their red lights blinking like mechanical eyes. Privacy was a luxury the conquered could not afford. Every conversation was monitored, every movement tracked. Yet somehow Marcus and a small group of others had managed to maintain a secret resistance network. They reached Section 7-2, find chaos. Dust filled the air as rescue teams worked frantically to clear debris from the collapsed tunnel. Captain Morrison's voice boomed over the noise, coordinating the effort with military precision despite the impossible circumstances. "Chen, thank God." Morrison's weathered face showed relief. "We've got a partial collapse about 50 meters in. The support beams are compromised, and I don't think we can dig them out before the whole section comes down." Marcus studied the tunnel entrance, his engineer's mind already working through the problem. "What about the emergency air shaft?" "Ken, we reach them from above, to unstable. One wrong move, and we'll have a complete cave-in." Morrison lowered his voice. "We've been trying for 2 hours. The Vorthok overseers are getting impatient. They're talking about sealing the tunnel and writing off the miners." The casual way the aliens discussed human lives never ceased to amaze Marcus. To them, the miners were simply tools that had broken down, placeable, and ultimately worthless. He had seen it too many times before. Good people, friends, left to die because their rescue would interfere with production schedules. "Not today," Marcus muttered, pulling out his portable scanner. "Zara, I need you to access the geological surveys for this section. Look for any natural caverns or weak points we can exploit." As Zara worked, Marcus noticed Dr. Sarah Walsh arriving with her medical team. Sarah was a small woman with prematurely gray hair and eyes that held both infinite compassion and deep weariness. She had treated countless injuries over the years, patched up miners after beatings, and held dying children whose only crime was being born human. "Status?" she asked, setting down her medical kit. "Working on it," Marcus replied, studying the scanner readings. Something caught his attention. "There, Zara, look at this." There's a natural gas pocket about 30 meters to the left of the collapse. If we can create a controlled explosion, we might be able to create a new access point. Morrison frowned. That's risky. If we miscalculate, people die either way. Marcus was already calculating the explosive charges needed.
But
this gives them a chance. Dr. Walsh placed a hand on his shoulder. Do it. As Marcus prepared the charges, his mind wandered to the signal they had sent 15 years ago. One desperate message launched into space on the day the Vorthok arrived, hoping against hope that Earth would send help. People had looked to the sky every day, expecting to see the familiar blue and white of Earth Defense Force ships breaking through the atmosphere. But the sky remained empty except for Vorthok patrol craft. Marcus had stopped looking up long ago. Hope was a luxury they couldn't afford. Survival was all that mattered now. It's keeping people alive another day, another week, another year. In small ways when they could, enduring when they couldn't. The explosion shook the entire section, sending workers scrambling for cover. For a terrifying moment, Marcus thought he had miscalculated. Then they heard it, voices calling from the new opening, weak, but alive. The rescue took another hour. 6 miners emerged, battered and covered in dust but breathing. Dr. Walsh immediately began treating them, while Captain Morrison organized teams to secure the new tunnel. It was a small victory, but in their world, small victories were everything. As the excitement died down, Marcus noticed one of the Vorthok overseers approaching. The alien's forearms moved with precise, mechanical motions as it accessed its datapad. Its translator collar crackled to life, filling the air with the emotionless tones that had become the voice of their oppression. Engineer Chen. Production. Delay unacceptable. Efficiency standards must be maintained. Marcus clenched his fists but kept his voice level. 6 humans are alive because of that delay. Human resources are replaceable. Schedule adherence is not. The overseer's multifaceted eyes showed no emotion. Future disruptions will result in disciplinary action. They both knew what disciplinary action meant. Cells, the interrogation chambers, the places where humans went to learn the price of defiance. He also knew that backing down now would send a message to every worker in the facility, that their lives meant nothing. That resistance was futile. Understood, he said finally, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. The overseer departed without another word. Marcus watched it go, hatred burning in his chest like a furnace. Around him, the miners were returning to their shifts, heads down, spirits broken a little more. This was how the Vorthok maintained control, not just through force, but through the gradual erosion of hope itself. That evening, Marcus sat in his small quarters, staring at a picture of Earth he had kept hidden for 15 years. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents, home, a place that might as well have been a fairy tale for all the good it did them now. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Walsh entered, carrying 2 cups of the bitter tea that passed for coffee in their rations. The miners you saved today will make full recoveries, she said, sitting beside him on the narrow cot that served as his bed. This time, Marcus accepted the cup gratefully. How many more cave-ins can we prevent? How many more people can we save before the Vorthok decide we're more trouble than we're worth? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of years of loss. Do you ever think about the signal? The one we sent to Earth? Marcus had tried not to think about it. False hope was more dangerous than no hope? At all. Sometimes. I used to imagine rescue ships arriving every night. Earth Marines storming the facility, overwhelming the Vorthok with superior numbers and tactics. She smiled sadly. Foolish dreams. Maybe not so foolish. Marcus surprised himself by saying it. Earth wouldn't just abandon us. There has to be a reason why help hasn't come. 15 years, Marcus. If they were coming, they would have been here by now. Before Marcus could respond, an alarm began wailing throughout the facility. Emergency lights bathed everything in. Red as Vorthok's voices barked orders through the communication system. Marcus and Sarah rushed to the window, looking out over the mining complex. Vorthok soldiers were moving with unusual urgency, forming defensive positions around key installations. Guard towers swiveled their weapons toward the sky rather than the human quarters. Something had the aliens spooked, Captain Morrison's voice crackled over the hidden resistance communication network they had built using salvaged equipment. All units, report to emergency stations. Something's got the bug stirred up. Marcus and Sarah made their way through the facility, joining other resistance members in an abandoned storage area that served as their meeting point. Zara was already there, along with Morrison and a dozen others. The captain's face was grim. As he briefed them on what his security teams had observed, Vorthok Command is in full alert mode. They've activated all defense systems and recalled patrol units from the outer sectors. Whatever's happening, it's big. Could be another colony revolt, suggested one of the miners. Maybe the folks on Kepler Station finally had enough. Morrison shook his head. But this is different. I've seen Vorthok response to rebellions before. This looks like they're preparing for external attack. The group fell silent as the implications sank in. External attack could only mean one thing. Someone with the technology and firepower to threaten the Vorthok Empire. But who? The aliens had been systematically conquering human space for decades, crushing every attempt at organized resistance. Suddenly, Zara's communication equipment began picking up signals. Not the usual Vorthok transmissions, but something else. Something that made her eyes widen in disbelief. I'm getting multiple contacts approaching the system, she whispered. Ship signatures I don't recognize, but the communication protocols. She looked up at the group, her voice barely audible. They're using Earth Defense Force encryption codes. The room erupted in confused voices, but Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in 15 years. A spark of hope that refused to be extinguished. He moved to the window and looked up at the alien sky that had been their prison for so long. And for the first time in over a decade, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, humanity was coming home. Above them, the first ships began to appear. Not the familiar bulk of Vorthok dreadnoughts, but sleek, predatory forms that moved with lethal grace through space. The Vorthok defensive platforms opened fire immediately, filling the void with deadly energy beams. But the newcomers didn't retreat. They didn't flee like the broken remnants of Earth's old fleet. Instead, they advanced with a confidence that spoke of technological superiority and tactical brilliance. Their return fire struck with pinpoint accuracy, turning Vorthok installations into expanding clouds of debris. Marcus watched in amazement as more ships appeared. Dozens of them, then hundreds. A fleet that dwarfed anything he remembered from Earth's military during the early days of the invasion. These weren't the same ships that had been overwhelmed by Vorthok numbers 15 years ago. These were something new, something evolved, something that had spent those long years preparing for this moment. The facility shook as explosions rocked the orbital defense platforms. Through the chaos, Marcus heard something that made his heart race. The distinct sound of atmospheric entry vehicles screaming through Zarian 7's sky. Ships were landing, and somehow he knew they weren't Vorthok reinforcements. Dr. Walsh grabbed his arm, tears streaming down her face. Marcus, is it really them? Is it really Earth? Before he could answer, a new voice cut through the static. On Zara's communication equipment, it's clear, strong, and undeniably human. This is Admiral Torres of the Earth Liberation Fleet. All human civilians on Zarian 7. To take cover and await rescue. Your long wait is over. Humanity has returned, and we're here to bring you home. Marcus felt something break open in his chest. Not despair this time, but something far more powerful. After 15 years of silence, 15 years of suffering, 15 years of believing they had been forgotten, the cavalry had finally arrived. The war for Zarian 7 was about to begin. And for the first time since the Vorthok invasion, humanity was going to fight back with everything they had learned. Everything they had built, and everything they had become in the darkness between the stars. The sky above them lit up with the fire of human vengeance, and Marcus Chen allowed himself to smile. The cavalry arrives. The sound of atmospheric entry grew louder as Marcus pressed his face against the reinforced window. Through the red-tinted emergency lighting of the facility, He could see streaks of fire cutting through Zarian 7's sky like falling stars. But these weren't meteors or debris from the orbital battle raging above. These were dropships, and they were coming in fast. The Vorthok facility erupted into chaos as alien soldiers scrambled to defensive positions. Their usual mechanical precision had given way to something Marcus had never seen before: panic. The insectoid creatures chittered frantically in their native language, while their officers barked orders through translation devices. For 15 years, the Vorthok had been the undisputed masters of this world. Now, for the first time, they faced an enemy that could challenge their supremacy. "Everyone stay low." Captain Morrison's voice cut through the noise as explosions began rocking the outer perimeter. "Zara, can you establish contact with the incoming forces?" Zara worked frantically at her makeshift communication array, fingers dancing across salvaged controls. "I'm trying, but there's too much interference from the battle overhead. Wait, ... I'm getting something." Static filled the air, then cleared, to reveal a crisp military transmission. Zarian 7 mining facility. "This is Lieutenant Kai Nakamura, Earth Special Forces. We are inbound for extraction. Identify yourselves and maintain position for friendly recognition." Dr. Walsh moved to the communication panel, her voice shaking with emotion. "Lieutenant Nakamura, this is Dr. Sarah Walsh, Senior Medical Officer. We have approximately 3,000 civilians in the main facility and unknown numbers in the outlying work camps." "Copy that, Doctor. Admiral Torres sends her regards and wants you to know that no one gets left behind. Stand by for liberation." Marcus felt his knees go weak. After all these years, Earth hadn't forgotten them. Somehow, humanity had found the strength to come back, to fight, to rescue their own. But questions burned in his mind. Where had these ships come from? How had Earth developed the technology to challenge the Vorthok Empire? Why had it taken 15 years? The first Earth dropship touched down in the facility's main courtyard with a precision that spoke of advanced technology. Its sleek black hull bore no resemblance to the bulky transports Marcus remembered from before the invasion. This was something entirely new, shaped like a predator, and armed with weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. The ship's ramp lowered with a pneumatic hiss, and what emerged took Marcus's breath away. The soldiers weren't wearing the standard-issue gear he remembered from Earth's old military. These warriors moved in powered exoskeletons that enhanced their strength and speed, their armor gleaming with adaptive camouflage patterns. Energy weapons hung at their sides, alongside projectile rifles he didn't recognize. Leading them was a young Asian man whose confident stride and alert eyes marked him as Lieutenant Nakamura. He moved with the fluid grace of someone born for combat, scanning the area with instruments built into his helmet. While his team secured the landing zone, the Vorthok response was swift and brutal. Energy bolts erupted from the guard towers, forcing the Earth soldiers to take cover behind their dropship. But instead of retreating, the humans did something that made Marcus's heart race with pride. They fought back with a ferocity and skill that surprised even their enemies. Lieutenant Nakamura's team spread out with tactical precision, using their advanced equipment to identify and neutralize Vorthok positions with surgical strikes. Their weapons seemed to cut through alien armor like paper, while their own protective gear absorbed energy blasts that would have killed unprotected humans. "How are they doing that?" whispered one of the miners, watching in amazement as an Earth soldier leaped impossible distances with assistance from his powered armor. Marcus shook his head in wonder. "They've been busy." More dropships began landing throughout the facility. As the first wave of Earth forces established a perimeter, each ship disgorged teams of specialists, medics, engineers, communications experts, and combat troops who moved with the confidence of veterans. This wasn't a desperate rescue mission. This was a calculated military operation executed by professionals who knew exactly what they were doing. The facility's main doors burst open as Lieutenant Nakamura and his team breached the building. The young officer's helmet retracted, revealing a face that couldn't have been more than 25 years old. Yet his eyes held the depth of someone who had seen far more combat than his age suggested. "Dr. Walsh?" he called out, Scanning the crowd of civilians who had gathered in the main corridor, Sarah stepped forward, still hardly believing what she was seeing. "That's me." Nakamura smiled, and for a moment the hardened soldier disappeared, replaced by a young man genuinely happy to be bringing good news. "Ma'am, it's an honor. Admiral Torres has been looking forward to meeting you personally. She's read all your medical reports from the early days of the colony." "Admiral Torres?" Sarah blinked in confusion. "I don't understand."
"What do you know?"
"About our reports? I've been monitoring Vorthok communications for years," Nakamura explained, while his team began setting up a mobile command post. "Every transmission, every data transfer, every status report. We know exactly what you've endured here, and we know what heroes you've all been." Captain Morrison stepped forward, his military bearing evident despite 15 years of captivity. "Lieutenant, I'm Rex Morrison, former Earth Defense Force. How many ships do you have up there?" Nakamura's grin widened. "Sir, we have 3 full battle groups in system, with more on the way. The Vorthok thought they were dealing with the same Earth they conquered 15 years ago." He paused, his expression growing serious. "They were wrong." Before Morrison could ask more questions, another voice cut through the noise. A woman's voice, crisp with authority and crackling through Nakamura's communication system. "Lieutenant, this is Admiral Torres. I'm inbound with the command element. Secure the facility and prepare for mass evacuation." Minutes later, another dropship landed, this one larger and more heavily armed than the others. The ramp lowered to reveal a strike team of Marines in powered armor, followed by a woman who commanded attention without saying a word. Admiral Torres was perhaps 50 years old, with steel-gray hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She wore the same advanced armor as her soldiers, but her bearing marked her as someone accustomed to command.
"Oh."
When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Dr. Walsh, Captain Morrison, Mr. Chen." She knew their names, had studied their files. "I apologize for the delay. Earth has been rebuilding." Marcus found his voice. "Admiral, with respect, where the hell have you been for 15 years? Torres didn't take offense at the question. If anything, she seemed to appreciate his directness. "Building the fleet you see today. When the Vorthok hit our colonies, they didn't just attack our ships and bases, shattered our entire way of thinking about warfare." She gestured to the advanced equipment surrounding them. "We had to start over. New technology, new tactics, new ships designed specifically to fight the Vorthok Empire. It took time to develop, time to build, time to train the crews who could use it effectively." Dr. Walsh stepped closer. "But why didn't you send word? We thought Earth had forgotten us. We couldn't risk communications that the Vorthok might intercept," Torres explained. "Every signal we sent would have given away our preparations. Had to let you believe you were alone, so that when we returned we could catch them completely off guard." Captain Morrison frowned. "The cost, Admiral. 15 years of slavery, thousands dead." Torres's expression hardened. "I know exactly what it cost, Captain. I've read every report, studied every casualty list, memorized every name. That's why we made sure that when we came back ready to end this war permanently." As if to emphasize her point, another series of explosions rocked the orbital space above them. Through the facility's windows, they could see the distinctive flashes of capital ship weapons fire. The battle for Zarian 7's orbital space was intensifying. And from the increasing frequency of Vorthok distress signals, it was clear who was winning. Commander Elena Vasquez, Torres's Marine leader, approached with a tactical update. "Admiral, perimeter secured. We've neutralized the primary Vorthok command center and their communication arrays. Resistance is collapsing faster than projected." Torres nodded. "Casualties, minimal on our side." The Vort. "Hey, well, they weren't prepared for what we brought to the party." Marcus watched the interchange with growing amazement. These weren't the same Earth forces he remembered from before the invasion. Those had been brave, but ultimately outmatched by superior alien technology. These soldiers moved with the confidence of a military that had learned from defeat and emerged. "Stronger, Admiral," Zara spoke up from her communication station. "I'm picking up distress signals from other facilities on the planet. It sounds like your forces are hitting multiple targets simultaneously. Correct? Torres confirmed. Operation Homecoming isn't just about Zarian 7. We're liberating 17 human colonies today, across 8 different star systems. The Vorthok Empire is about to learn what happens when you mistake human patience for human weakness. The scope of the operation left Marcus speechless. This wasn't a rescue mission, or even a raid. This was the opening move of a coordinated campaign to drive the Vorthok out of human space entirely. Earth hadn't just survived the alien conquest. It had used the intervening years to become something far more dangerous than it had ever been. Before, Dr. Walsh began organizing medical stations to treat the wounded, both human and alien. Her oath as a physician extended to all sentient beings, regardless of their role in humanity's suffering. Lieutenant Nakamura's medics worked alongside her advanced medical equipment healing injuries that would have been fatal with the colony's primitive facilities. As the evacuation began, Torres pulled Marcus aside. "Mr. Chen, we've read your engineering reports. Your work keeping this facility operational under impossible conditions has been remarkable. We could use someone with your skills in the fleet." Marcus looked around at the people he had protected for 15 years. "What about them? They're going home," Torres assured him. "But the war isn't over. The Vorthok Empire spans dozens of systems, and there are more human colonies under their control. This is just the beginning." The Admiral's words carried weight, but also hope. For the first time in 15 years, humanity was on the offensive. They weren't just surviving or escaping. They were fighting back with the full fury of a species that had been pushed to its breaking point and emerged stronger. As the last civilians boarded the evacuation transports, Marcus took one final look at the mining facility that had been both prison and home. The Vorthok banners had been torn down, replaced by the blue and white flag of Earth. Human soldiers patrolled corridors where alien overseers had once dispensed casual cruelty. But this was more than just a military victory. It was proof that no matter how dark the night, no matter how hopeless the situation seemed, humanity would never stop fighting for its own. The cavalry hadn't just arrived. It had come back stronger, smarter, and more determined than ever before. The war for human freedom was far from over. But as Marcus boarded the transport ship and felt the artificial gravity of Earth technology beneath his feet, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. The Vorthok Empire had awakened something it couldn't control. And humanity was coming for every last one of their worlds. The sky above Zarian 7 continued to burn with the light of human vengeance. And this was only the beginning. The human storm 3 weeks after the liberation of Zarian 7, Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the EDF Retribution, watching through the massive viewports as humanity's most ambitious military operation unfolded before his eyes. The sight still took his breath away. Hundreds of Earth warships moved in perfect formation through space, their hulls gleaming with adaptive armor that shifted colors like liquid metal. Admiral Torres had been right when she said the war was just beginning. The liberation of 17 colonies had sent shock waves through the Vorthok Empire, forcing them to consolidate their forces around their most important strongholds. Intelligence reports indicated that the aliens were preparing for a massive counterattack, one that would either crush humanity's resurgence or be broken against the anvil of human determination. The target was Vorthok Prime Station, a massive orbital fortress that served as the regional command center for their occupation forces. It controlled 12 star systems and housed the central computer networks that coordinated Vorthok military operations across this entire sector of the galaxy. More importantly, it held nearly 50,000 human prisoners from colonies that had been completely depopulated. Marcus had volunteered to join the assault force. Despite Admiral Torres's offers to send him safely back to Earth, Dr. Sarah Walsh had made the same choice. Had Captain Morrison and Zara. They had survived 15 years of captivity together, and they would see this war through to its end. Together, the bridge of the Retribution hummed with quiet efficiency as officers monitored tactical displays and coordinated with the rest of the fleet. Lieutenant Nakamura, now promoted to commander after his heroic actions at Zarian 7, served as Admiral Torres's tactical advisor. The young officer had proven himself not just in combat, but in the delicate work of organizing resistance movements. On occupied worlds, Admiral, final reconnaissance reports are coming in, Commander Nakamura announced, his fingers dancing across holographic controls. Vorthok Prime Station is heavily defended. They've got orbital defense platforms, a fleet of at least 200 warships, and what looks like some kind of new superweapon mounted on the station itself. Torres studied the tactical display with the focused intensity that had made her legendary among Earth's military forces. Analysis of the superweapon? Unknown technology, but energy readings are off the charts. Our best guess is some kind of planet killer, possibly designed to sterilize worlds rather than just destroying military targets. The implications sent a chill through everyone on the bridge. The Vorthok weren't just preparing to defend their position. They were ready to commit genocide on a scale that would make their previous atrocities look like minor cruelties. If they couldn't maintain control of their human slaves, it would simply eliminate them entirely, Dr. Walsh, now serving as the fleet's chief medical coordinator, looked up from her own displays. Admiral, we're detecting massive biosignatures on the station. If our estimates are correct, there are at least 50,000 humans aboard. It's probably in holding cells throughout the lower levels. Then we go in and get them, Torres said simply. All of them, no matter what it costs. Marcus admired the Admiral's certainty, but he also understood the terrible mathematics of warfare. Even with humanity's technological advantages, assaulting a fortress like Vorthok Prime Station would be incredibly costly. The aliens had spent decades perfecting their defenses, and they would fight with the desperation of a species facing its first real military defeat. Commander Alina Vasquez, now leading the entire Marine Assault Force, approached the command group. Her armor had been upgraded with new technology developed specifically for boarding actions against Vorthok vessels. K-enhanced sensors, improved weapons, and most importantly, psychological warfare systems designed to exploit the aliens' insectoid. Neural structure. Marine assault teams are ready, Admiral. We've studied the station's layout from captured Vorthok databases, and we've identified 17 possible breach points. The plan is to hit them simultaneously while the fleet engages. Their naval forces. Torres nodded. Remember, people, we're not just fighting for military victory here. We're fighting to prove that humanity will never again be slaves. Every human on that station goes home. Every Vorthok commander who ordered atrocities against our people answers for their crimes. The fleet moved into assault formation as alarms began wailing throughout the Vorthok defensive perimeter. The aliens had detected the approaching human armada, and their response was everything the intelligence reports had predicted. Massive energy beams lanced out from the orbital platforms, while swarms of Vorthok fighters launched from hidden bays throughout the station. But humanity had learned from 15 years of studying Vorthok tactics. The Earth fleet didn't advance in the traditional battle lines that the aliens expected. Instead, they moved in fluid formations that adapted constantly to enemy fire, using advanced point defense systems to intercept incoming weapons, while their own guns spoke with surgical precision. Marcus watched in amazement as human fighters engaged Vorthok squadrons in deadly aerial ballet. The Earth pilots moved with impossible grace, their ships responding to mental commands translated through neural interfaces. What had once been science fiction during Marcus's youth was now battlefield reality, giving human pilots advantages that the aliens couldn't match. The first breakthrough came when Commander Nakamura's Special Forces teams infiltrated the stations. Outer defenses using stealth technology that rendered their ships nearly invisible to Vorthok sensors. They planted charges on key defensive installations, timing their explosions to coincide with the main fleet's assault. The space battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. Earth's capital ships traded devastating volleys with Vorthok dreadnoughts, while fighters and bombers swarmed through the chaos like angry hornets. The aliens fought with mechanical precision, but the humans fought with something far more dangerous: the fury of a species that has been pushed beyond its breaking point. Admiral Torres commanded the battle from the Retribution's bridge with a calm that seemed almost supernatural. She had spent 15 years preparing for this moment, studying every aspect of Vorthok technology and tactics. When the aliens deployed their superweapon, charging it for what was clearly intended to be a devastating strike against the human fleet, she was ready. "All ships, execute Maneuver Omega," Torres ordered. "Target the station's primary power. Grid. Full bombardment. Maximum firepower." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every human ship in the fleet opened fire simultaneously, concentrating their weapons on a small section of the station's hull that intelligence had identified as critical to its power. Distribution network. The combined firepower of humanities. Most advanced weapons tore through alien defenses like they were made of paper. The superweapons charging sequence faltered as power fluctuations cascaded through the station's systems. Emergency lighting bathed the massive structure in red as its defensive capabilities began failing one by one. That was the signal Commander Vasquez had been waiting for. "All Marine units commence boarding action. Let's go bring our people home." Assault shuttles launched like arrows from bowstrings, racing through the chaos of the space battle toward predetermined breach points on the station's hull. Marcus rode with Vasquez's command team, his engineer's knowledge of similar structures making him invaluable for navigating the station's complex interior. The insertion was violent and terrifying. Explosive charges blew holes in the station's armored hull while Marine teams poured through and powered armor that turned them into one-person armies. The Vorthok defenders were brave, but they were fighting an enemy that combined technological superiority with an emotional intensity they couldn't comprehend. Marcus found himself running through corridors that reeked of ozone and alien machinery, following Commander Vasquez toward the detention levels where the human prisoners were held. Behind them, the sounds of combat echoed through the station as Marine teams systematically cleared each section. They encountered their first major resistance at the entrance to Detention Block 7. A squad of Vorthok guards in heavy armor had barricaded themselves behind energy barriers, their weapons trained on the single-access corridor. For a moment, it looked like the advance would be stopped. That was when Dr. Sarah Walsh surprised everyone by producing a device that Marcus didn't recognize. She had been working with Earth scientists during their time in the fleet, applying her medical knowledge to develop new technologies for the war effort. "Neural disruptor," she explained calmly, activating the device. "Targets the Vorthok nervous system specifically. Non-lethal, but highly effective." The effect was immediate. The alien guards collapsed as their enhanced reflexes and coordination were scrambled by the neural interference. Commander Vasquez's Marines moved in quickly to secure the position. And the advance continued. The detention levels were a nightmare of cramped cells and inhumane conditions. Thousands of humans, many of whom had been prisoners for years, stared in disbelief as Earth Marines began opening their cells. Some were too weak to walk. Others had been broken by years of psychological torture. But all of them were alive. And all of them were going home. Marcus helped carry an elderly man who could barely stand, his body wasted by years of inadequate nutrition and medical care. As they moved toward the evacuation points, the man gripped Marcus's arm with surprising strength. "Are you really from Earth?" the prisoner whispered. "Are we really being rescued?" "Yes," Marcus replied, feeling tears in his eyes. "We're taking you home. All of you." The evacuation proceeded with military efficiency, but it was the human moments that would stay with Marcus forever. Children seeing their first Earth soldiers, his parents reunited with teenagers they had thought were dead, medical personnel working frantically to stabilize prisoners whose conditions would have been hopeless without advanced Earth technology. Dr. Walsh moved through the evacuation like a force of nature, organizing medical teams and personally treating the most critical cases. Her years of experience keeping people alive under impossible conditions had prepared her for this moment, and she saved dozens of lives that would have been lost in a less organized rescue. Meanwhile, space battle continued to rage around the station. The Vorthok fleet was putting up fierce resistance, but human tactical superiority was beginning to tell. Earth ships used advanced targeting systems to identify and exploit weaknesses in alien defenses, while their own adaptive armor absorbed damage that would have crippled older vessels. The turning point came when Captain Morrison, serving as a tactical advisor aboard one of the assault cruisers, identified a critical flaw in the Vorthok command structure. The aliens relied too heavily on centralized control, making them vulnerable to decapitation strikes against their leadership. Admiral Torres, Morrison's voice crackled over the communication system. We've located the Vorthok fleet commander's vessel. If we can eliminate their command ship, the rest of their forces will lose coordination. Torres didn't hesitate. Retribution and escort vessels, priority target the Vorthok flagship. All other units continue the evacuation support mission. Attack on the Vorthok command ship was swift and brutal. Human fighters swarmed the massive vessel, while capital ships pounded it with concentrated fire. The alien admiral tried to retreat, but Earth forces had learned to anticipate such tactics. The flagship was surrounded and destroyed in a spectacular explosion that lit up the entire battlefield. As predicted, the loss of their command vessel threw the remaining Vorthok forces into chaos. Some attempted to retreat, only to find human ships blocking their escape routes. Others tried to continue fighting, but without coordination their efforts became increasingly futile. Within hours, the Vorthok fleet was either destroyed or captured. The station itself fell shortly afterward, with their naval support gone and their defenses crippled. The remaining Vorthok forces surrendered, rather than face complete annihilation. Commander Vasquez accepted their surrender with the professionalism of a soldier, but also with the grim satisfaction of someone who had seen too much human suffering to feel mercy for their oppressors. The aftermath was a mixture of triumph and revelation. In the station's computer cores, Earth intelligence teams discovered the full scope of the Vorthok Empire's operations against humanity. Dozens of other prison stations, hundreds of occupied worlds, millions of human slaves scattered across the galaxy. But they also found something else: evidence of internal dissent within the Vorthok Empire. Not all aliens supported the enslavement of humans, and some were actively working to undermine their government's policies. The war was not over, but humanity now had potential allies among their former enemies. Admiral Torres stood on the observation deck of the liberated station, looking out at the debris field that had once been a Vorthok fleet. Around her Earth, ships moved in formation, their hulls scarred by battle, but their flags flying proudly. The evacuation transports were already heading home, carrying 50,000 humans back to freedom. Marcus joined her at the viewport, still hardly believing what they had accomplished. "What happens now, Admiral?" Torres smiled, and for the first time since he had met her, she looked truly relaxed. "Oh, we continue. There are more stations like this one, more humans to be freed. The Vorthok Empire thought they could break humanity's spirit by scattering us across the galaxy and making us forget who we were." She gestured to the Earth ships moving through space with practiced efficiency. "Instead, they gave us a reason to become something we never were before. Not just survivors, not just soldiers, but liberators. Every human in the galaxy is going home, Marcus, no matter how long it takes, no matter what it costs." As if to punctuate her words, a new group of ships appeared at the edge of the system. Not Vorthok vessels, but Earth reinforcements. The second wave of Operation Homecoming, ready to continue the campaign that would restore human freedom to every corner of the galaxy. Dr. Walsh approached them, her medical uniform stained with the evidence of a long day saving lives. "Transport is away, Admiral. All prisoners accounted for and en route to medical facilities." "Casualties?" Torres asked. "The psychological trauma will take time to heal, but everyone is going to make it home." Marcus looked around at the people who had become his family during the darkest chapter of human history. They had survived 15 years of slavery, helped liberate thousands of their fellow humans, and played their part in humanity's greatest military victory.
Ow.
More importantly, they had proven that no force in the galaxy could break the human spirit permanently. The war against the Vorthok Empire would continue for years to come, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Humanity had learned the most important lesson any species could learn, that true strength came not from dominating others, but from refusing to be dominated. They had been tested in the fires of oppression and emerged as something new, something stronger, something that would never again allow any sentient being to suffer as they had suffered. As the last Earthships prepared to depart Vorthok Prime Station, now a liberated symbol of human determination, Marcus Chen looked up at the stars and smiled. The sky no longer seemed like a prison or a barrier. It was a highway home, and humanity was traveling it with the confidence of a species that had finally learned its true strength. The storm had passed, and in its wake, the galaxy would never be the same.